Good evening, Night Nation. Andrew Cherico here for the Sons of UCF, brought to you by Latavius Murray's Nights 24/7. It was a chaotic day, a big time day for the future of UCF with early signing period, the transfer portal, lots of chaotic additions, lots of chaos going on in this UCF community. We wanted to bring you this live episode, a special talking about some of the signees that are going to be in this class who have signed already, the impacts they can make, and like I mentioned, all the chaos of the transfer portal. Along with myself, I also have a very special guest, another one of my Knights 24/7 colleagues, Joe Londergan. He's going to be on chatting with me. Joe, how's everything, man?
I'm good. Another hectic signing day in the books.
Yeah, I mean, just craziness. I mean, first things first, it was signing day. UCF had a class, somewhat, 13 guys. One of them, Jakari Jackson, I'm not sure if he's officially signed yet, but he intends to sign with UCF. He's just going through, I think, some paperwork issues. But for the most part, smaller class for UCF, one of the smallest classes in a long time for the history of this program. It's a new era with this NIL, Joe. It's the program is in a different direction now in terms of the recruiting. I mean, so many people were used to the Gus Malzahn, boom, 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 all these four-chip prospects, blue-chip prospects. And now it's kind of three-star under the radar. UCF did secure their biggest quarterback commit in program history, Rocco Marriott. I spoke with him after the West Virginia game when UCF won that one big time. He said he loved it. He said the main reason why he committed was because of the coaching staff. He says coaching means a lot to him. But he's a very strong commitment, Joe. What have you seen from the signing class so far?
Yeah, I think I would have liked to see a little more just a little more in terms of the actual number of prospects in the class. But, I think Frost said it in his presser, the actual size, length, the physical measurements on a lot of these kids that signed in the class, I think is going to be really helpful, particularly on those offensive line guys and the one defensive tackle in the group, Noah Mercer. I think he's got room to fill out a little more. It sounds weird saying that about a guy who's 285 pounds, but still, you need a big boy in the middle there. So I think that's my main observation. I think the whole of the offense, as far as the skill position guys, we're still kind of figuring out what's actually left on the table from this year's team. But some of these other guys that are in this 13-man class, I think are projects, but I think some of these guys are going to be ready fairly quick. Maybe not in 2026, but fairly quickly.
Yeah, so if you all were following, thank you, Joe. If you all were following on the Knights 24/7 message board, you would see that we had an active article going through all the signees of the day in order from when they were announced on the UCF Twitter and social media. So, Joe, I kind of just want to go through some of these guys and maybe the potential that they can have in this program, how they can impact the team, and maybe if they're a day one guy, if they're a guy that's going to take some time to develop. The first one that I got was at 7:04 a.m. Three-star Amon Williams. He's a 6'6" offensive tackle at a Tabor Academy. I think Amon Williams, this offensive line needs to help, right? There's no questioning about that. He's a rookie, so he's not going to get time right away. They're going to invest in the transfer portal. But you kind of want to build an offensive line through the portal. This isn't you want to build an offensive line through your recruiting class. You don't want to build through the portal each year because you want to build consistency. You want to gel those guys out. So hopefully Amon Williams is one of those future pieces. Joe, what do you think he can do in this offense?
Yeah, again, I think the physical measurement on the kid is pretty decent. Number 112 offensive tackle in the class. Playing up in New England, it's not exactly, Florida or Texas, but I think some of those kids that come out of the colder states can be a little more hard-nosed. So I think that's a good way to go there. Number 10 overall recruit in his state. So I think it's a good place to start for that offensive line.
Absolutely. And going on to the next one who signed. This is somebody who I interviewed for a Knights 24/7 exclusive as well, one that was posted later on YouTube for the Sons of UCF is running back 3-star Arthur Lewis. And just to preface, everybody in this class but Rocco Marriott is a 3-star prospect, which raised some concerns and raised some flags. But I think one thing that was important, we did a special with Brian Dillon of 247, and he was telling us the stars don't really matter, especially when you're trying to find fits for the offense. And we know Coach Frost loves a fast player. Arthur Lewis fits that mold, and he's from Florida. I think he's going to be a really solid addition. I think he's somebody that can take UCF into a next level in the future. He's one of those future backs you kind of put a lot on. There's some backs on this team, Stacey Gage, Tavion Swint. There's still a lot of questions with the portal, but seeing a guy like this, I'll bring up one of the comments from the article. He said to be a Knight is a blessing. He wants to have a similar impact to fans like RJ Harvey had on the school. He wants to leave UCF a better place than he found. I mean, Joe, that has to be some pretty good comments. You have to feel happy about that.
Yeah, I think it's always nice when you see someone who knows the context of the program and some of the bigger names that have come through. And, Scott Frost kind of mentioned it in his presser. I think the one position where they're kind of overloading on talent right now is the running back room, with guys coming back from this year that didn't get a lot of snaps between, Miles and Jaden getting the majority of the work. So I think in turn, guys like Arthur Lewis and Kaj Baker will have the benefit of getting to learn from, Agamemnon Adei and Stacey Gage and some of the other guys in that group. So I think it's a good place to start for them. And like you mentioned, having another Florida kid never hurts.
Yeah. 2 letters, 2 words, Robert Arnold with a question in the chat. Do we have any bruiser running backs, or are they all speed guys? From my understanding of this class, they are speedy guys. They're not really the bruiser type. Between Arthur Lewis, the other back is Kaj Baker, which we'll get later on into the special. But for UCF, those are the kind of guys they're looking for. I believe they're hoping to keep Stacey Gage, which was more of a bruiser back. But Arthur Lewis and Kaj Baker, I think they can instantly become 2 of the fastest guys on the team. Kaj Baker, for sure. He is 5'7", but has some trailblazers on him. I also saw another question from Robert. Does a small signing class mean that Frost is looking for more in the portal? Yeah, I believe that is the goal. UCF is in such a predicament right now because they don't have the Texas Tech money to go out there and get 4-star guys and spend $2 million in the portal. UCF is only investing in the recruiting class, I believe, for players that they think that can make an instant impact either day one or have a secure future with the roster. They don't have money to spend on 4-chip guys that are not gonna play on the field, and I think that's the bottom line of the situation. During the transfer portal, this team's going to be very active. They saved a lot of money for this portal. I think Coach Frost knows it's important to get some franchise cornerstones through the recruiting class and build those guys up to be hometown guys. But in this new era of college football, I think it's all in the transfer portal. Do you agree?
Yeah, you mentioned the offensive line being one of the areas that they're going to need to address through the portal. I think that's interesting just because finding the really high level guys with a lot of snaps under the belt, as far as offensive tackles in particular, that can get expensive quick. So I'm curious to see what the strategy is going to be there. And, from the other positions, particularly maybe in the defensive secondary, I think they're going to need to plug up some spots there, with Philip Dunn going to the NFL in particular after a huge year there. So, yeah, I think the portal is going to be massive for them, and sounds like they've been really paying attention to how that situation is going to develop for the last, couple months or so.
Yeah, all right. Moving on to the next signee, we have 3-star linebacker here. This is a last name that I struggle with, so excuse me if you're watching this and I botched this. Matthew Akapinti, I believe it's how it goes. I spoke with him prior to signing, and he said it's just a big blessing to be here at UCF, and he looks forward to getting to work hard. This is a Mark D'Onofrio guy. Mark D'Onofrio has ties in the Northeast, and this guy is from New Jersey. And I think it's important that these coaches in this new era have to expand out to where they're from and get their pipelines going, because with Florida, all the talent's going to the top-ranked schools because, Florida is just the recruiting monster for all the kids in the country. But I think this guy can have a really strong impact future in the lineup. I think for majority of these guys, and that's going to be the current trend, these are guys who can make a real impact in their second year or third year, except for a guy like, I say Kaj Baker can get going right away. That's just one of my locks who can make an instant impact. But Akapinti could be a strong addition for UCF. I can see him kind of like a Cole Kozlowski kind of a role, like strong bruiser, getting inside, making a play. And I don't want to take too much time out because we still have a transfer portal to talk. We have 3-star offensive tackle Kazal Charlton. This one has a little bit of drama behind it, Joe. Coach Frost made some interesting remarks in the press conference today regarding him, and there was a viral video for all those who don't know. Charlton got involved in a fighting altercation during a game where he was eventually later on, the school was banned from the playoffs and he was suspended from playing in the playoffs. So that kind of just led to him finishing out the season and going to UCF. Now, Joe, what was interesting was in the press conference, Coach Frost was asked about him, and he almost had to catch himself in a way. He was saying like, it doesn't feel good having a guy who did that on like it almost felt like he was saying like that's not something that we are proud of, almost in a way. Like he didn't want to throw him under the bus. He was just trying to say that wasn't a high character move. I still think he could be an impactful player. They brought him back on for a reason. Joe, what do you think about the situation?
To play devil's advocate, I think what this offensive line group kind of missed a little bit this year was an edge. I think having someone who, obviously not going to advocate violence, but it's a violent sport. So, just have someone who can kind of bring some aggression into that group, I think will be useful. At the end of the day, whoever they bring in to be the full-time offensive line coach, he's going to be a little bit of a project because you do have to channel that. There's a time and a place. But I really have no problem with bringing in someone who can bring a little bit of that aggressiveness and that edge into the offensive line room, because ultimately that's going to kind of push that group too. So, but again, time and a place, and that's just a maturity thing.
Yeah, I think honestly, if I'm a quarterback, having a guy like that defending me, I can't complain about that. That's a guy he's going to have your back. If he's on your team, he wants quite literally get physical for you. And talking about quarterback, one of the big positions that everybody's talking about today in the UCF atmosphere, 3-star quarterback Dante Carr, 6'3" from Minersville, Pennsylvania. I spoke with Carr a ton throughout his recruiting process, and let's say he's just happy to be a Knight. He was initially a part of the quarterback class with a quarterback, Kane Archer, before he decommitted going to Utah. But for Carr, he was. I'll go into some of the exclusive that I had with him. He grew up playing tight end. He wanted to be a receiver, and he had a huge frame, so they kind of moved him out to tight end. He loved to catch, but then he got an opportunity at quarterback, and he fell in love with having the ball in his hand every time. And he made a lot of impressive plays in high school, led his team very far. I think it's important for Carr that he knows he's going to have a chance at playing quarterback. I asked him about, what do you think about Kane being on the recruiting class with you? What do you think about Marriott being on the recruiting class with you? He says, I love the competition. That's what he strives for. He wants to win. He said the only stat that matters to him are championships. Do I think Carr is going to be a day one starter? Do I think he's going to have a strong possibility to start? No, not per se. I do think he's going to compete, and I do think he's going to be a great utility guy for the offense and a quarterback who can play snaps. I'm not discrediting his quarterback skills at all. Coach Frost says you can use a little development, but that's for all of these guys in this class. Remember, these are still guys coming out of high school. Still so much growth. Joe, you have any comments on Dante Carr?
I mean, I'll just say that kind of athleticism can go a long way, especially, I think there's a lot of faith that Frost is placing in Mackenzie Milton and kind of his ability to actually, develop quarterbacks and kind of take those skills and hone them. And it doesn't hurt rather that he comes from a place like Minersville, Pennsylvania, a strong football tradition in that state and a very, blue collar town. So I think that's going to, very much fit with what Frost is trying to build.
Absolutely. I know I've talked about him a bunch already, but now the next prospect is 3-star athlete. And I say athlete because he was recruited by running back coach Jimmy Beal and defensive back coach Brandon Harris, Codge Baker. Interesting prospect. I think he's one of the most unique guys in this class, Joe. 5'7". That's not tall. He's a very short guy on that field compared to everybody, especially in a Big 12 atmosphere. But for Baker, I do think his speed is the dominating factor in all of his potential. I think he can take UCF into that offense. And I'll quote Coach Frost on this. He says, I don't want to put a lot of pressure on the kid, but Adrian Killens was one of the first guys that he signed when he got to UCF. So I think he has that kind of mindset and that role for Baker. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the defensive secondary either for, like, we're talking about prevent plays and guys to get out there for the speed. I think he can be a great addition. I think he's one of the stronger additions for UCF. What do you think about Baker?
For sure. I mean, when you talk about his speed, this is the kind of player that Frost just like salivates over, just wants someone with that kind of crazy kind of speed. And, comes from the Miami area, had, 1,000 rushing yards last year, 10 rushing touchdowns, also had 500 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Can really see him being useful as kind of that scat back role.
Absolutely. And just a reminder to anybody watching, you can head over to Latavius Murray's Nights 24/7 and catch this article, which I'm referencing right now, and get all of the signees' reactions. I spoke with many of them before signing day, just asking them, what does it mean to be a UCF Knight? And I'll give half of a quote for Coach Baker. He says, I'm very excited to sign with UCF, and I'm just becoming a Knight means a lot to me because they give me an opportunity to play at the next level. I think that's all Coach Frost wants. He wants guys that are going to fight and keep going as much as possible. And I think kind of that underdog mentality, even with the signing class, just 13 guys, lower ranked in the country. I mean, these are guys that want to fight and have a chip on their shoulder. Moving on to the next signee, we had 3-star Marion Queen, 6'1.5" out of Martin County. So Florida, another Florida guy. So half of this class was Florida guys. We're not going to say Coach Frost didn't recruit out of Florida, but I think there should be more of an emphasis in the future. But Queen, I think he's a player that there's 3 defensive backs recruited in the signing class, and I think all of them have a strong potential to play future parts in this defense. I think Queen is just another one of those tall, lanky frames that are going to play some good man coverage.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, I like you mentioned, I like his length. I like the fact that I think they're leaving room for some additions via the transfer portal in that defensive secondary, like I mentioned. And really, when it comes to rather recruiting defensive backs, it's a numbers game. You got to get a lot of guys in there to try to figure out who works and who doesn't. And, there's plenty of room for a lot of these guys on special teams as well. So we'll kind of see where he fits into that picture.
All right. Yes, sir. And moving on into the next prospect, we have 3-star Alassane Idrisu, edge, 6'6". And this is one of the more interesting guys for me in this class as well. He was initially a 4-star prospect. He was the highest ranked guy in this UCF recruiting class. And in the season, he suffered a patellar tendon tear, which sidelined him for the rest of the year. He dropped the ranking from a 4-star to a 3-star. It hurt his growth. It hurt his development. But I think the reason why UCF was still pursuing him is because he has a natural ability and talent to grow into that player. I know it's a very scary injury, and it could be one that derails a career. But if he bounces back from it correctly, goes about the right rehabbing procedures, I think he could be an issue on the field. I do think UCF does really well with recruiting their edge rushers, and I think for Coach Dawson, they hit big with this guy.
Yeah, I'll just say, for UCF to kind of still give him an opportunity, even though he's got such a serious knee injury, there has to be something in his character that's that much impressive and really fits with what Frost wants the vibe and the identity of this team to be. So curious to see how he fits into things.
Main event of the evening, us talking about this signing class, the main event for UCF signing class. 4-star quarterback Rocco Marriott. This guy had all the spotlight on him. He came to UCF. He visited twice. All the cameras were on him. He is the blockbuster commit of this class, the blockbuster commit of UCF's quarterback history. Rocco Marriott, Platte County, 4-star recruit, initially committed to JMU, James Madison, flipped to UCF. Key part of that race, Mizzou was also a key player, but UCF did just enough. And like I mentioned before, it was the coaching. The coaching would play the big factor in Rocco choosing UCF. I think for him, along with his 3-star tight end teammate, which we'll get into later in the video, Brooks Hall, I think that can be a good 1-2 punch for the future UCF. Coach Frost says he's the right mold. It was a really funny moment, actually. He was asked, like, what do you like about Rocco? And he was like, he's big, he's fast, strong arm. I mean, that's what you're looking for in a quarterback, right?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of look at a lot of the guys that are making waves in the NFL right now. I mean, Josh Allen's huge. CJ Stroud's a big guy. Like, I think it can't be understated how helpful it is to have a quarterback with some serious size and a big frame, because he's that much harder to bring down. And when he gets some momentum going forward, that adds, 2-3 yards to any carry, really. So I think it's helpful to have someone who has that type of physical, who just fits that kind of physical prototype that Scott wants. Now the hard part is keeping some of these bigger guys who in some cases are still growing and still kind of figuring out their own bodies healthy long term. So we'll see how well that goes.
Taking a quick look at the chat, Robert said, did that fight into make him a bargain for UCF? I think he's talking about Charlton right there. Let's say a bargain. I'll go more to, I would say, he was going to sign with UCF either way. I don't think anybody would have stolen him off of that incident, but I did think it could have hurt his reputation. And now I think he's going to have some character development at UCF. Let's just say it. Let's put it that way. Going back into Idrisu, the injury might have made him a bargain. I think Idrisu has a great chance to be a great talent. Like you said, that injury is serious. That's about as serious as it can get for an edge rusher. You need that explosiveness off the edge, spin moves, power rush moves. You need that. A lot of that comes from the legs. So I'm interested to see how he'll develop. And is Rocco the biggest quarterback since Blake? Ooh, that's a good question. Thinking back to the previous history, I'm not sure. Adam, if you have, I know Adam's in the green room. If you know a quarterback off the top, you can drop that in the chat. From my recent history, I don't believe so. 6'4" is among the biggest, I think, in a long time for this program. I mean, Dante was a huge drop, but that wasn't after Blake.
Blake was 6'5", Blake was 6'5", 230. So that's
huge guy.
Huge, yeah.
All right,
or at least that's what he tapped out at, I think, but still.
Next prospect we have here is 3-star linebacker Preston Hall out of Ridgepoint in Texas. He, I think, along with Okapinti, is going to play a strong factor in the linebacker in his development. I think D'Onofrio, KJ, of course. KJ was a big guy, but in terms of, I wish KJ did more with the size. Let's put it that way. But for Preston, I think D'Onofrio is a guy that is going to make sure he develops his linebackers through and through. He's a big guy on playing seniors. Lewis Carter was an exception for the most part. I think that he's a guy that UCF needs to return next season. But you had Cole Kozlowski and you had Kelly Lawson, both guys seniors, and they played majority of the minutes and majority of the snaps, I should say, on the field. So I think Hall is another one of those guys where D'Onofrio's going to really take him under his wing and try to develop them as best as possible.
Yeah, when you play in the Big 12 and you play all these very pass-heavy offenses too, it helps to have linebackers that can be versatile in the coverage game as well. And you kind of look at Preston Hall's high school stats, 12 tackles for loss, had an interception, broke up 4 passes last year. So he's going to help at that side of things in a big way as well.
Yeah. I forget. They brought up KJ Jefferson in the chat. I mentioned that earlier. I kind of forget he was a UCF quarterback. Quit on the team. It was a blurry moment in UCF history. Let's put it that way. All right, guys, just 3 more signees, and then we can talk some transfer portal before we get out of here. 3-star tight end Brooks Hall. Like I just mentioned, I think I don't know how he would probably take it, but he was a part of a package deal with Rocco Marriott from Platte County. I think he's going to be a great go-to target. I don't think he should take that offensively if that was a negative connotation, just saying like he was brought along with Rocco. But I do think having a quarterback and that you're comfortable with going into the next level, a Big 12 school, that's important. Some guy that you can have chemistry with and practice with. They'll be probably in the same practice squad. They'll be in the second or third team, practicing with each other each year, getting better at their craft. I think he's a big kid. He's 6'5", 225, 92nd overall ranked tight end in the class of 2026. I think he's just going to be a strong addition for UCF.
Yeah, I mean, tight end's another one of those positions. Like you can never really have too many because there's always going to be a need to kind of find somewhere to put those big bodies. And if they're athletic, even better. So, and it helps, of course, that he is already kind of has a pre-existing chemistry with someone who I think a lot of people are presuming to be the UCF starting quarterback, at least at some point down the line. Maybe not, today, tomorrow, 2026, but eventually.
Absolutely. Going into the next signee who was committed in this class, at 8:23 a.m., it was officially announced that Noah Mercer signed with UCF. He was originally committed to USF, but decommitted after the college news going to Auburn. So this was a strong addition for UCF, kind of a late flip, very late flip, I should say. I had a prior intel on this one. I thought he was initially going, I put a crystal ball out for Latavius Murray's nice 24/7. I thought he was going to sign on Thursday, a little bit later in this period, but he kind of said we're going all in and got that signing. We were all over that. We had a breaking news article. I got quotes from him of what it means to be a Knight. I think D line is one of those positions, especially in the middle. It's going to be important that UCF continues to develop because for this some reason this team can't have healthy defensive tackles. No matter how good they are, no matter how hard they try, there's a couple that go down each year. So I think it's important to have a guy like this for some depth and some guy who can grow into a starter in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be a little bit of a project. When you kind of look at some of the guys that excelled at defensive tackle for UCF just this season, you know, John Walker's a great example when he was healthy, taking up space in the middle. So I think I think he's just got to get a little bit bigger and stronger. But I think it's a great place to start, and you know, to play as much, to be a two-way player the way that he was in high school. I mean, that's a lot of natural athleticism. So curious to see what this coaching staff can do once they get their hands on him.
Yeah, and then last one officially signed in this class, 3-star defensive back Elijah Keys. I spoke with Keys a ton during his recruitment process. He made a bunch of visits to UCF. If you've seen any of the articles I had put out, he was often one of the players photographed in them. Keys has a great relationship with Coach Brandon Harris. They were always laughing. He came with his parents, always talking on the sideline. Coach Harris, by the way, class act, a great guy. And I think he connected with the recruits, arguably the best out of anybody on UCF's coaching staff, just the way he connected and the way he brought up conversation and made them feel comfortable. These are guys who were committed for a long time, and he kept them locked in for UCF. Elijah Keys committed March 29th. So he kept them locked in the entire time through. He had other offers, but for Keys, I think he's going to be just one of those another solid, strong additions for UCF's defensive backroom. I'll pull up a quote, which you can find more of on Nice 24/7 from his signing for his reaction. To be officially a Knight, I dreamed of playing at this level of college football since I can hold a football. I'm really blessed to be in this position. That just means a lot. A lot of these players I know, of course, they're living out their dream to play college football. So getting to do it for a Big 12 program like UCF, that means a lot to them, especially like Coach Frost said, these guys that are under the radar, these are guys who may have a chip on their shoulder. So I think it's important that they continue to grow and continue to carry that chip as they develop into players, starters for UCF's defense.
Yeah, he's a disciplined guy, comes from a military family. His dad was a Marine, and big play capability too. Had 3 interceptions in a single game this year. So expect him to turn in some kind of Philip Dunham type performance at some point during his UCF career here.
Absolutely. So that kind of recaps the official signing class. For now, there was one player not listed on the official list, which is Jakari Jackson. He was another one of Coach Brandon Harris defensive backs that he got locked in. From my understanding, Jakari is as locked in as anybody else on this group. He was just having some paperwork issues. Expect that announcement or stay up to date on Latavius Murray's Nice 24/7 for the latest updates on him. But to my understanding, he is a go for UCF. Joe, what are your thoughts on this recruiting class?
Yeah, it's a good place to start. You know, I think when Scott Frost came in this past offseason, he really had no time to kind of find high school guys that kind of fit what he was trying to do. There's a lot of leftovers. And I think this being his, first real crack at putting a high school class together, I think it makes a lot of sense for, again, the type of guys that they want. And we've said it a few times, but clearly a huge point of emphasis over the next couple of months is filling the holes in this roster via the transfer portal. And I think that's smart. So, I think there's nothing really in this class that blows me away, but I think it's very solid. And I think it shows that there's a lot of trust in this coaching staff to kind of develop these guys into regular contributors in the next, 18 months.
Absolutely. I think that's what you hit the mark. It's going to be, they're going to have to fill out this team in the transfer portal. Coach Frost made a quote earlier that I posted on Twitter, and a couple other reporters did as well. Matt Michelle one to note. He said that college football is broken at its current state right now with the limited regulations, the NIL, the rev share, everything just not regulated. It's kind of like a free-for-all in this current atmosphere. I think a lot of people are kind of weary on Coach Frost's thoughts because they're like, we've heard this story before. Like, he's repeated it constantly, but I still think it's a valid argument to make. I think he's just sharing his thoughts on the game, and I think he wants his thoughts to be acknowledged in a way where it initiates some change, and he wants to have even if it's a small part in that change, he wants to be recognized as one of those people who capitalizes on saying like, yeah, we need to regulate college football. We need to have some sort of boundaries, some sort of restrictions. So it's not just, he said, if I can remember correctly, it's college football having the model of if you can have the most money you win is not good for the sport. And I feel like anybody who disagrees with that is wrong. I think it shouldn't be who has the most money. It should be who can develop the best, who can recruit the best, not just who can give out a blank check. And I think that's where the sport is heading right now. What do you think about those thoughts and the general consensus of college football?
Yeah, it's tough to disagree with a lot that Coach Frost said. I think there's been a lot of hypocrisy about spending and where money goes and where it should go in college football for a long time. I don't necessarily think that's going to get solved anytime soon because people like money. People like making money, from the university presidents to the athletes to, the people even above the university presidents and boosters, et cetera. But, I think with college football, you either are the big boys, I think what Texas Tech is trying to become in terms of, how much money they have. And then you have, the bigger SEC schools, the Ohio States, et cetera, who are at the very top. And then I think for some of these other programs, like programs in the G5 FCS, some of these coaches are kind of embracing like, all right, well, we can be a stepping stone for guys to commit, come here because they want to develop and then get those opportunities to go play at the big schools. And I think some of those coaches are embracing that model. And then you have coaches like Frost who kind of know that they're not quite at that point up here as far as resources, et cetera, but they don't necessarily want to commit to being the guy that can develop players to get to the upper echelon of college football. They want to get here, but it's just not going to happen overnight. And I feel for those guys in the middle because they're kind of having a little bit of an identity crisis right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Question on the screen for Wade and Charles. That is, I would say, a situation that needs to be monitored at the current moment. There's a lot of back and forth chatter. Let's just put it this way. Coach Frost, I think, loves Wade and Charles. He expressed that in a press conference leading to the end of the season. I think that was also one of the tactics. Like, let's get Wade and Charles out there to the media. Let's make him feel good. Let's make him sure like UCF fans recognize him and get some publicity. I think Wade and Charles is going to be sought after very much so in the portal. I think it's important to know that Tony Williams, who just recently entered the transfer portal, represented under the same agency, I believe. So that's important to remember. But I think UCF can make a strong enough pitch to keep Wade. I think he's a guy that you need to build a franchise around. You need to build a program around. That's a receiver for the future. I really do think UCF will make a very strong push for him to stay. But for right now, it's just a situation that needs to be monitored. Stay up to date on the message board. I'll try to get as many updates as I can on there. Joe, Wade and Charles can have a big impact in the future of this program.
I agree. I look at this receiver group and it's encouraging how deep it is, but they got to retain, at least 3 or 4 of these guys in order to, have that depth at this point really mean anything for the coming years. And Wade and Charles was one of those guys who really started to come along towards the end of this year. And it would certainly be a shame to, see him go with how well he did in certain moments this year.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question in from Robert. Any of these recruits coming in early? There's a few. I need to get back to you on that. I wonder if you are enrolling early and packing their bags and coming down to Orlando. I'll get that number. Be sure to stay tuned on the 247 message board. That will be an answer. I don't want to give you the wrong information, so I'll keep you up to date on that. But overall, I just want to give some thoughts from the press conference today. I do think UCF could head. This is, like many people have said, a very crucial offseason in program history. We know what happened with Gus Malzahn and the experience that team should have done so much better. I do think it's an underlooked statement that Coach Frost went 5-7 with the roster that he did, and Gus Malzahn went 4-8 with the roster that he did. If Coach Frost had Gus Malzahn's roster, maybe with a quarterback, let's put it that way, would that have been the same record with Coach Frost? And I know this. UCF is 2 or 3 plays away from a 7-5 record, and they're playing in a bowl game. Just talking about Kansas game, talking about Houston, just a couple of those plays, and everything is super different for this lineup. for this roster. Is it some have pointed out could be an advantage that kind of UCF isn't in a bowl game. Coach Frost has more time to prepare for the recruiting class. Transfer portal, obviously, you want the guys to go out, the seniors to go out on a strong note. But just food for thought. I mean, maybe this gave Coach Frost more time to settle in on the future of the program.
Yeah, I think there's two schools of thought there. I think on the one hand, yeah, it does give them a head start on kind of jumping into the portal and seeing who they can grab. I also think there's going to be a lot of guys who don't jump into the portal until after the bowl game, because these bowl games are an extra chance for some of these guys to get extra film and develop a little more. They're going to get extra practice time. So I think that's interesting. And UCF could also, some of these younger guys could also use some of that extra practice time as well. So that'd be nice. But then the double-edged sword of that is those guys get film and then they jump into the portal and the cycle starts all over again. So, but it would be nice to, yes, it is nice to have that head start on the transfer portal. But at the same time, you can't, keep your players locked away so no one else can have them. And then you have a weird college football Rapunzel situation. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's also, in terms of just what else I heard from Coach Frost, he's excited about the future of the program. He often referenced to his first season at UCF when they struggled as well. He was like, "Oh, Mackenzie got booed when he was coming off the field," and there was just a bunch of questions about Coach Frost. And then the next year they come out, have an undefeated season. Obviously, that's not going to be replicated. I feel like that can't be expected by anyone for UCF. But what I do think is that this roster can make an improvement. I think it all comes down to the additions they make in the transfer portal. These early signees. These are guys that are going to have an impact next year. Coach Frost, not to jump around too much, but he said him not being here for last year affects this year's recruiting class and next year's, because these are kids you start talking to once they're freshmen, sophomore, and as they grow into later years of their high school career, that's when you start really tightening those bonds and saying, "Hey, do you want to come play for my program?" He didn't have that, so he kind of had to just go off a limb and just find the best guys possible and see who UCF already had strong connections with the assistant coaches and build off of those.
Yeah. To answer Robert's question, when does the portal open and close? Opens January 2nd, closes January 16th. But yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, just trying to think of other stuff before we get off of here. Stuff that stood out to me. I'm going to have an article later about takeaways, my top takeaways from the press conference. Oh, of course, offensive line coach. Can't forget about that. That's a top priority for Frost. He says he wants to get it done sooner rather than later. He gave his remarks again about Coach Sean Clark passing away, and it was really like, the blunt truth of the situation. He kind of had to act like it didn't happen. He had to continue playing football like nothing happened and continue coaching his offensive line like nothing happened. And that's hard for not only a coach but players who kind of have to just go through the process and play like there wasn't another coach just coaching them a week ago. I think that's something they want to get down early. I expect something to be announced hopefully in the later end of this month or in beginning of January. I think it'll be something that's done pretty quickly. I think they want their guy fast, get their offensive line transfer portal going. I think that'll happen pretty soon. But offensive line's important, Joe, and I think for Coach Frost in this situation, it was just tough with Sean Clark.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to point to one single thing that led to the season that UCF had, but I mean that was huge. I mean, and he said that Coach Bear and Danny Hope kind of came in and did what they could with that group. But I mean, if you look at a lot of the issues that this team had, there's a lot of focus issues, and it's hard to kind of recollect yourself and everything after you kind of go through a loss like that. And again, when you're still kind of developing mentally as a young man, having to go through that, and to Coach Frost's point, you have to just kind of push through and compartmentalize and deal with it later. Guys in their late teens, early 20s don't know how to do that yet. So it's it can't be understated the effect that event had on this team this year.
Yeah, and just out of respect for Coach Clark, what an amazing man he was. He got the opportunity to speak with him a couple of times, and just a really funny memory I have of him was it was Coach's Media Day obviously, this year. First time I met him was actually 2024 Curable, if that sounds correct. Appalachian State head coach against Miami, Ohio. Fantastic game. I got to cover that. That was my first Curable. Spoke with Coach Clark here for Coaches Media Day. And this was after my situation with Coach Deion Sanders. And he saw the viral interaction. He's like, I know I'm not no Coach Sanders, but it's great speaking with you. So that holds a dear place in my heart. And that's something I'll never forget. What just a remarkable man. And I'm truly saddened about the situation. It's kind of even hard to talk football after I say something like that, but it's kind of the nature of the game. It's a cold business, Joe. It's a cold business.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'll just say Coach Frost also interviewed him a few times covering the G5 thing for so many years, and just such a joy to be around. Man after my own heart in terms of his passion for coaching offensive line in particular, and dearly missed. Was such a fantastic ambassador for the sport.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to answer a few more questions and then get off here. But for more takeaways, those are just a few that me and Joe have. From Scott Frost Presser, be sure to check out Latavius Murray's Nice 247 for more articles on the entire early signing period, plus all this transfer portal chaos going on. Sons of UCF asked the question in the chat, will UCF go after a QB in the portal? Am I breathing oxygen? There's no question about it. There's no doubt about it. I think that's the clearest position that UCF is going to go after. Truly in my heart, the starting quarterback is not on this roster. Spoke with Coach Frost today, as we mentioned before. Cam Fancher, they're going to try his best to get him a medical red shirt. Remember, he was the starting quarterback going into Jacksonville State. Got knocked out pretty early. Never really found his footing again back in the season. I do think that's a guy Coach Frost would want to have around. Maybe another solid backup, or a guy who couldn't possibly win out a starting job again, but I do think the starting quarterback isn't on this roster yet.
Fair enough. I'll just say with Cam Fancher, one of the things that you hear the most about him from the coaching staff is just his intellect and his understanding of the game. Even if he does get to come back, even if he's not the best choice to be the starting quarterback, having him around some of these young guys like Dante and Rocco, I think will be extremely beneficial for them, and in turn, the long-term benefit of the team.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, I think that about wraps it up for majority. We forgot one thing. Taven Jackson entering the transfer portal. That's pretty important.
That little thing, yeah.
With Taven Jackson, just what are your takeaways from him this season? What do you think about him entering the transfer portal, the entire optics of the situation?
Yeah. I mean, just as far as his play, I don't think he played bad. I think he had some moments where the deep throws weren't particularly great. I think he had a couple decisions that weren't fantastic. I think going into camp, I expected him to be the clear-cut guy. And based on every evaluation we got of him from the coaching staff, he wasn't blowing anybody away, which I thought was extremely interesting. But when he got the opportunity to go in and lead things when Cam Fancher went down, I can't say he really was, disappointing. I think he did what he needed to do. I think it really helped that he had some of the guys he had to check down to, and Dylan Wade and, Debo Coleman and that sort of thing. So that helped, I think, a lot. I don't know. I think when you have a guy who played at such a powerhouse high school like Center Grove, and then had a chance to develop Tennessee, and then, played at Indiana a little bit as well, you expect more, and he's just not really there. And then I think part of the situation that's not really his fault is just all the other quarterbacks that are on the roster. They want to get Cam Fancher back. They've got these two young guys coming in. So, we'll see. I do feel for him in that regard.
Yeah, I'm going to have a message board post either tonight or later on or tomorrow, breaking down the situation of his transfer. But in my entire perspective of Taven Jackson, same as you, I thought he was the starter leading up into the season. Although I already had word that Cam Fancher was going to be the guy, my projected starter. I always thought that Taven was, quote unquote, more talented with more potential in terms of strong arm and the kind of quarterback that Coach Frost want. I thought Taven Jackson throughout the season. In the first 3 games, he looked great. I mean, the leading the final drive against Jacksonville State, the blowout win against UNC, just kind of those things led you to think, well, this guy's going to be the guy for the rest of the season. And then things tend to go down the wrong path once they get into conference play, and things go downhill from there. With Taven, tons of potential. I thought we saw a lot of flashes in the season of when he can be good. And this is one of my favorite Coach Frost quotes. When Taven's good, he's very good. When he's bad, he's not what you want, kind of a thing. So Taven Jackson had a lot of good moments when he was good. Some beautiful balls to Dwayne Thomas, Wade and Charles. Dylan Wade was his favorite target, in my opinion, all season long. So just some of those guys. Just towards the end of the season, I don't think he was the guy that Coach Frost was looking for. I know this was one thing that was kind of discreetly, but not so much, put out in the beginning weeks of the season. If you remember, Taven Jackson, when we asked Coach Frost about him at the beginning, it was like, what did you see about Taven Jackson in this game that maybe surprised you or you didn't see in camp? He was like, he came out with fire. He played hard. He played with some intensity in him. He had a passion on the field. Did that mean he wasn't super passionate during camp? Did that mean he kind of played like he had the job already? Are those some of the things that maybe you can take away from a quote like that? And then another thing about Taven, I just don't think he scrambled enough for Coach Frost liking. I think in the final game against BYU, he was all over the field. And I think that's arguably one of his best. I mean, that first quarter was fantastic. He was running around the pocket. Not his fault. I mean, the offensive line was getting blitzed a ton. So he was scrambling to the left, scrambling to the right. But he made some nice throws outside of the pocket and kept drives alive on third down. I think Coach Frost would have wanted to see more of that in the season from Taven. But otherwise, I think it's just a situation where I think Taven, towards the end of the season, we spoke with BYU. He was a guy who wanted to stay. I think it just didn't work out that way. There will be more, like I said, details posted on the message board, but I think it's UCF is going to find a new quarterback, one in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I guess I have one additional thought on just the quarterback situation. I think when you kind of look at some of the good quarterbacks that Frost has had as a head coach, Mackenzie Milton's a great example. Some of the ones he had at Nebraska to a lesser extent, but and then some of the moments that both Taven and Cam Fancher had this year. I think he really likes those quarterbacks that, like you said, scramble a lot and try to make plays with their legs and leave it all out there. The problem is, as we saw with Cam in that Cincinnati game in particular, that's not sustainable. So I'm curious to see how that kind of goes from here on out, and if they can kind of find a happy medium where the quarterbacks can show the full, potential of their athleticism, but also not, get these injuries that sideline them for multiple weeks.
Yeah, because Cam was banged up really bad.
Yeah.
Played through a broken rib. Fractured rib. Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Injured ribs.
Injured everything. Yeah.
Injured everything. So those, I know. And then how much is Rocco going to run? How much does he want him to run? Those are the questions. You bring up a great point. How realistic is that longevity if you're a dual threat in his offense?
NIL deal with flak jackets. We'll see.
Well, I think that does it all for our Knights 24/7 with Latavius Murray's signing day special, brought to you by the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. Thank you guys for hosting us. Joe, any final remarks before we head off here?
Come check us out on the message boards on Knights 247 with Latavius Murray, talking about the signing class, talking about the offseason, talking about hoops, talking about basketball, and then baseball's around the corner as well.
Basketball season's fun. UCF pulls out a win against Townsend on Sunday. I believe it's the best start in college basketball history for Coach Dawkins. So
yeah, this team's been really fun to watch so far through the first couple of weeks of the season.
So yeah, be sure to stay tuned with all the updates. You get analysis, thoughts and quotes from Latavius Murray himself, plus a great group of writers, including myself and Joe. So much talent on that team, and just come check us out. Thank you all for watching. You can please drop by the board, ask any questions we may have not gotten back to you on during this live special. And this just marks the future second season for Coach Frost. All right. Thank you all for watching. Have a good one.